The alarm bells screamed across Luna Station like angry metal birds. Dr. Amanda Blake jumped up from her desk, knocking over her coffee mug. The hot liquid spread across her research papers, but she didn't care. Those alarms only rang for one thing: incoming ships that weren't supposed to be there. She ran down the white hallway, her lab coat flying behind her. Other scientists and workers rushed around her, all heading to the observation deck. Amanda had been studying alien life for 15 years, but they rarely got visitors this far out in human space. Captain Jake Morrison was already at the big window when Amanda arrived. His gray uniform was neat as always, but his face looked worried. The man never showed worry unless something was really wrong. "What do we have, Jake?" Amanda asked, catching her breath. Jake pointed out at the black space beyond the window. "Single ship badly damaged. It's been broadcasting the same message for the last 10 minutes. "What kind of message?" "Listen for yourself." Jake pressed a button on the wall panel. A strange voice filled the room. The words were in Galactic standard, but the accent was thick and hard to understand. The voice sounded tired and scared. "Please, anyone who hears this, we need help. We are peaceful people. We have children with us. We have nowhere else to go. The council has rejected us. Please, show mercy." The message repeated. Amanda felt her heart squeeze tight in her chest. She had heard fear before, but this was different. This was the sound of people who had lost everything. "How many ships do they have?" she asked. "Just one. It's big, but it looks like it's falling apart. Our scans show about 800 life forms on board." Amanda's eyes went wide. 800? In one ship? That's way too many people for a ship that size. "That's what I thought too." Jake rubbed his jaw. "The question is, what do we do about it?" Other officers started talking at once. Some said they should call Earth Defense Command. Others wanted to turn the ship away. One young officer said they should attack before the aliens could attack them. Amanda listened to all this and felt angry. "They're asking for help," she said loudly. Everyone stopped talking and looked at her. "Dr. Blake," said Commander Sarah Wilson, Jake's second in command, "we don't know anything about these aliens. They could be dangerous. Did you listen to that message?" "Does that sound dangerous to you?" "It could be a trick." Amanda walked closer to the window. The alien ship was getting bigger as it came closer. She could see holes in its side and scorch marks on its metal hull. Parts of it were held together with what looked like metal patches. "Look at their ship," Amanda said. "Really look at it. Does that look like the ship of people who want to fight us? They can barely keep it flying." Jake moved to stand next to her. "What are you thinking, Amanda?" "I'm thinking about what my grandmother used to say. She lived through the resource wars back on Earth. She used to tell me that you judge people not by how they treat their friends, but by how they treat strangers who need help." The room went quiet. Even the young officer who wanted to attack looked uncomfortable. Jake stared out at the damaged ship. Amanda could see him thinking hard. She knew Jake Morrison. He was a good man, but he was also a careful man. He had to think about the safety of everyone on Luna Station. "Sir," said Lieutenant Peter Walsh from the communications station. "They're requesting permission to dock. They say they have sick people on board who need medical help." Amanda turned to Jake. "Let me talk to them." "Amanda, I'm the head of xenobiology. If anyone should make first contact with a new species, it should be me." Jake thought for a long moment, then nodded. "Patch Dr. Blake through to their ship." Peter worked at his controls for a few seconds, then gave Amanda a thumbs up. Amanda took a deep breath. "Unknown vessel, this is Dr. Amanda Blake of Luna Station. Can you understand me?" The reply came quickly. The voice was different this time, older and more calm. "Yes, Dr. Blake, I understand you. My name is Zephyra. I speak for my people. Zephyra, can you tell me who your people are and why you need help?" There was a pause. When Zephyra spoke again, her voice was full of sadness. "We are Kethmari. We were part of the Galactic Council for 300 years, but the Council has new laws now. Laws that say people like us are not pure enough to exist." Amanda felt cold. "What do you mean, not pure enough?" "Our ancestors changed our bodies long ago to help us grow food better. The Council says this makes us contaminated. They gave us 30 days to leave Council space forever. Most worlds will not take us. We have been traveling for 60 days, looking for someone who will let us live." The room was silent. Everyone was listening now. "How many of you are there?" Amanda asked. 847. "That is all that remains of our people. The others chose to stay and face the Council's judgment rather than leave their homes." Amanda closed her eyes. She didn't want to think about what judgment meant. Jake stepped forward and took the communicator. Zephyra, this is Captain Morrison. I'm in charge of this station. Are any of your people sick? Yes, Captain Morrison. Many are sick. We have been in space too long with not enough food. Our ship's life support systems are failing. We have 12 children who need help very soon or they will die. Amanda looked at Jake. She could see the battle going on in his head. His job was to protect Luna Station, but 12 children were dying. Jake made his decision. Zephyra, you have permission to dock at Bay 7. We'll have medical teams waiting for you. Thank you, Captain Morrison. Thank you so much. Commander Wilson stepped closer to Jake. Sir, shouldn't we contact Earth Defense Command first? We'll contact them after we help those children, Jake said. Get Dr. Martinez and his medical team to Bay 7 and get the emergency supplies ready. Amanda felt proud of Jake in that moment. This was why she respected him. When it really mattered, he chose to help people instead of following rules. What do you need me to do? She asked. You're our expert on alien life forms. I need you to help Dr. Martinez understand their biology so he can treat them properly. I'll be ready. As people rushed around getting ready for the aliens to arrive, Amanda stayed at the window. The Kethamari ship was close now. She could see just how badly damaged it was. There were holes that had been patched with different colored metal. Some parts looked like they might fall off at any moment. These people had traveled across the galaxy in that broken ship, carrying everything they owned and everyone they loved. They had been rejected by every world they visited. Now they were here asking humans for help. Amanda thought about her grandmother again. The old woman had taken in refugees during the resource wars. She fed them when she barely had enough food for her own family. She said it was just what decent people did. Maybe that's what made humans different from other species in the galaxy. Maybe they weren't the strongest or the smartest, but they still remembered how to help strangers who needed it. The Kethmari ship moved slowly toward the docking bay. In a few minutes, Amanda would meet the first members of a species that the rest of the galaxy had thrown away. She just hoped that humanity could give them what the rest of the galaxy couldn't, a chance to start over. 6 months had passed since the Kethmari arrived at Luna Station. Amanda Blake stood in the new greenhouse that had been built in Section C, watching something amazing happen. The plants growing here were like nothing she had ever seen before. Lisa Chen knelt next to a Kethmari named Mortel, carefully studying the strange blue flowers that grew from vines as thick as a person's arm. Lisa had come from the farming colonies on Terra 3rd to help with the refugee integration program. The root system goes down 15 feet, Mortel explained in his careful English. His voice was soft and musical like all the Kethmari. It finds water that other plants cannot reach. Lisa nodded and made notes on her tablet. And it can grow in soil that's too salty for earth crops? Yes. My people have grown these for 1,000 years on worlds where nothing else would live. Amanda smiled as she watched them work. The Kethmari had many gifts, but their greatest talent was making things grow. In just 6 months, they had helped human farmers solve problems that had troubled them for years. The integration hadn't been easy at first. The Kethmari were different from humans in many ways. They were taller and thinner, with skin that looked like it was made of tiny silver scales. Their eyes were huge and dark, and they had 4 fingers instead of 5. But the biggest difference was how gentle they were. Amanda had never met people who were so careful about not hurting anything. Dr. Blake, called a voice from the doorway. Amanda turned to see Peter Walsh walking toward her. The young linguist looked excited about something. What is it, Peter? You need to come hear this. Zephyra is telling one of their history stories to the children in the community center. It's incredible. Amanda followed Peter out of the greenhouse and through the corridors of Luna Station. The refugee section had been expanded 3 times since the Kethmari arrived. What started as emergency shelters had become a real community. They reached the community center and found a crowd of both human and Kethmari children sitting in a circle. Elder Zephyra sat in the middle, her ancient voice weaving a tale that held everyone spellbound. Long ago, Zephyra said, when the first Kethmari learned to make the dead soil live again, there was a great drought on our world. The other peoples laughed at us. They said we were fools to try to grow food where nothing had grown for 100 years. A small human girl raised her hand. What did you do? We dug deeper. We planted differently. We sang to the seeds to give them courage. Zephra's eyes twinkled. And when the rains finally came, we had food for everyone. Even the people who had laughed at us. Amanda felt her throat get tight. Even in their stories, the Kethmari talked about sharing and helping others. Peter leaned close to Amanda. I've been recording their stories for 3 months now. They have thousands of years of history, and almost all of it is about helping other people or taking care of their world. No wonder the council got rid of them, Amanda whispered back. They make everyone else look bad. After the story ended, Amanda walked through the refugee section. The Kethmari had turned the plain metal corridors into something beautiful. They had painted murals on the walls showing scenes from their homeworld. Plants grew in every corner, making the air smell fresh and clean. She stopped at the medical center where Dr. Martinez was finishing his evening rounds. Through the window, she could see him talking with a Kethmari doctor named Velen. How are our people doing, Carlos? She asked when he came out. Better every day. The malnutrition cases are all recovering. But Amanda, you should see what Velen has been teaching me. Their knowledge of plant-based medicine is incredible. They have treatments for things we've been fighting with surgery and chemicals for decades. Are you saying they're more advanced than us? Not more advanced. Different. They think about healing the whole body, not just fixing the broken parts. Amanda continued her walk and found herself in the main corridor near the communications center. She could hear raised voices coming from inside. Through the open door, she saw Captain Morrison talking to someone on the big screen. The man on the screen had a red face and was waving his arms. Amanda recognized him. Richard Hayes, a politician from Earth who had been complaining about the refugees since they arrived. Captain Morrison, Hayes was saying, these aliens are costing us millions of credits. We're feeding them, housing them, giving them medical care. What do we get in return? Jake's voice was calm but firm. We get the satisfaction of helping people who needed help, Mr. Hayes. That's not enough. Earth's colonies have their own problems. We can't afford to take care of every species that gets kicked out of the council. The Kethmari are contributing to our society. They're teaching us new farming methods, sharing their medical knowledge. They're taking jobs from humans. Amanda had heard enough. She stepped into the room. Actually, Mr. Hayes, they're creating jobs. Hayes looked surprised to see her. Dr. Blake, I didn't know you were there. The Kethmari aren't taking anything from us. They're working with our people, not instead of them. Lisa Chen has learned more about agriculture in 6 months than she learned in 4 years of school. Our farmers are using Kethmari techniques to grow crops on worlds where we thought it was impossible. But the cost will be paid back 100 times over. Do you know what we spent last year trying to make the colonies on Kepler 442 self-sufficient for food? 12 billion credits. The Kethmari solved that problem in 2 months. Hayes looked uncomfortable. That's just one example. Jake stepped forward. Mr. Hayes, I've read the reports from all our colonies that have accepted Kethmari refugees. Every single one is doing better than it was 6 months ago. They're healthier, more productive, and happier. But what about security? How do we know they're not dangerous? Amanda almost laughed. Dangerous? Mr. Hayes, have you ever met a Kethmari? They won't even kill insects that get into their food supplies. They catch them and take them outside. They could be pretending. For 6 months? With 800 people? Including children and elderly? That would be quite an act. Hayes's face got redder. The point is, we don't know what the council will think of this. We could be making enemies. We already know what the council thinks, Jake said. They've made it clear that any species that helps refugees is considered an enemy. So we have a choice. We can abandon these people to keep the council happy, or we can do what's right. And if the council decides to punish us? Amanda and Jake looked at each other. They had talked about this many times in the past 6 months. Then we'll face that when it happens, Jake said. But we won't abandon people who need help just because we're afraid. Hayes shook his head. You're both fools. This will end badly. The screen went dark. Jake sat down heavily in his chair. Sometimes I wonder if he's right. About what? About this ending badly. The council has been quiet for 6 months, but that won't last forever. When they find out how well the Kethmari are doing here, they might decide to do something about it. Amanda sat down across from him. Jake, do you remember why you let them dock in the first place? Because they had sick children. Right. And if you had to make that choice again today, what would you do? Jake was quiet for a moment. The same thing. Then we're doing the right thing. Whatever happens, we're doing the right thing. Later that evening, Amanda walked back to her quarters. She passed the recreation area and saw something that made her stop. A group of human and Kethmari teenagers were playing some kind of game together. They were laughing and talking like they had known each other their whole lives. One of the human boys, Tony Martinez, was trying to teach a Kethmari girl named Sela how to play chess. Sela was trying to teach Tony a Kethmari game that used colored stones and a board with holes in it. No, Tony was saying, laughing. The horse moves in an L shape, but why? Sela asked. That makes no sense. That's just how the game works. Your games are very strange, Sela said, but she was smiling. Amanda watched them for a few minutes. These young people didn't see aliens and humans. They just saw friends. Maybe that was what the future would look like. She went to her quarters and sat at her desk. She had reports to write for Earth Command, but instead she found herself thinking about the past 6 months. The Kethmari had changed Luna Station in ways no one expected. The place felt more alive now, more hopeful, but she also knew that Jake was right to worry. The Council would not ignore what was happening here forever. Soon humanity would have to decide if they were willing to fight for the people they had chosen to help. Amanda looked out her window at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Galactic Council was making plans. But here on Luna Station, human and Kethmari children were playing games together and learning from each other. Whatever came next, they had already won something important. They had proved that different species could live together in peace. Now they just had to convince the rest of the galaxy. The warning came at 3 a.m. Amanda Blake woke up to her emergency communicator screaming like an angry bird. She grabbed it from her nightstand and saw Jake Morrison's worried face on the small screen. Amanda, get to the command center now. We have company. Amanda threw on her clothes and ran through the empty corridors of Luna Station. The emergency lights were flashing red, which meant they had visitors who might not be friendly. When she reached the command center, she found it full of people who looked scared and angry at the same time. What's happening? She asked Jake. 3 Council warships just dropped out of hyperspace. They're demanding to talk to whoever is in charge. Jake's voice was tight. They want the Kethmari. Amanda felt her stomach drop. They had all known this day might come, but hoping it wouldn't and being ready for it were 2 different things. Who's on the ships? The lead ship is flying the flag of the hegemony. That means Ambassador Veltar is probably on board. He's the one who wrote most of the genetic purity laws. Amanda had heard of Veltar. He was a Zephyrian who believed that species who had changed their DNA were dangerous to the natural order of the galaxy. He had convinced most of the Council that genetic purity was the key to galactic peace. What does he want exactly? To talk. But I think we both know what he really wants. The main screen lit up with an incoming transmission. The face that appeared was long and thin, with pale blue skin and eyes that looked like chips of ice. Ambassador Veltar looked exactly like what Amanda had expected, cold and sure of himself. I am Ambassador Veltar of the Galactic Hegemony, the alien said. His voice was smooth but had no warmth in it. I demand to speak with the authority figure of this station. Jake stepped forward. I'm Captain Morrison. I'm in command here. Captain Morrison. I am here on official council business. 6 months ago, a ship carrying genetic criminals entered your space. We have reason to believe these criminals are still here. If you mean the Kethmari refugees, yes, they're here. Refugees? Veltar's voice got sharp. They are criminals who violated the fundamental laws of genetic integrity. They must be returned to council space to face justice. Amanda stepped up next to Jake. And what kind of justice would that be? Veltar looked at her like she was something unpleasant he had stepped in. Who are you? Dr. Amanda Blake, head of xenobiology. I've been working with the Kethmari for 6 months. They're peaceful people who just want to live their lives. They are abominations. Their ancestors corrupted their genetic code with artificial changes. This makes them a threat to the natural development of life in the galaxy. A threat? Amanda almost laughed. They're farmers and healers. The only thing they threaten is hunger and disease. You do not understand the greater picture, human. Genetic purity is not just a law, it is a sacred principle. Species who abandon their natural form open the door to chaos. Jake crossed his arms. Ambassador, the Kethmari have been living peacefully on my station for 6 months. They work hard, they help their neighbors, and they've never hurt anyone. I'm not giving them to you. Veltar's face got darker. Captain, you are making a grave mistake. The Council has the authority to retrieve criminals wherever they hide. The Council has authority in Council space. This is human space, not for much longer. Veltar smiled, but it wasn't a nice smile. Humanity is a young species. You do not understand the consequences of defying the Council. The transmission ended. Jake turned to his communications officer. Get me Earth Defense Command. Priority 1. While Jake talked to his superiors, Amanda went to find the Kethmari leadership. She found Elder Zephyra in the community center, surrounded by worried members of her people. The old Kethmari woman looked tired and sad. Dr. Blake, Zephyr said when she saw Amanda. We felt the ships arrive. We know why they are here. Zephyra, I want you to know that Captain Morrison won't give you up. None of us will. I know you will try, but the Council is very powerful. Perhaps it would be better if we went with them. We do not want to bring trouble to humanity. A younger Kethmari named Jorith spoke up. Elder, we have seen what the Council does to our people. If we go back, we will not live to see another season. Zephyra looked around at the faces of her people. Amanda could see the terrible choice written on the old woman's face. Save her people by running again, or stay and risk bringing disaster to the humans who had helped them. There might be another way, Amanda said. Let me talk to some people. Amanda left the community center and went to find Peter Walsh. The young linguist was in his office, but he wasn't alone. 3 people Amanda had never seen before were sitting at his desk. They looked nervous and kept glancing at the door. Amanda, Peter said when he saw her. Perfect timing. I want you to meet some friends. The 3 strangers stood up. The first was a tall, thin being with green skin and large eyes. The second looked almost human but had silver hair and pointed ears. The third was short and covered in what looked like soft fur. This is Commander Silara of the Zephyrian Resistance Fleet, Peter said, pointing to the green-skinned alien. Captain Elena Vasquez of the New Centauri Alliance and Engineer Tokhan of the Delta Coalition. Amanda stared. Resistance Fleet? Commander Silara stepped forward. Dr. Blake, we represent species that have been threatened by the Council's new laws. We've been watching what humanity did for the Kethmari. It gave us hope. Hope for what? That we're not alone in thinking the Council has gone too far, Captain Vasquez said. Her voice had a slight accent that Amanda couldn't place. The genetic purity laws don't just threaten the Kethmari. They threaten any species that doesn't fit the hegemony's idea of perfection. Engineer Tokhan spoke in a high, squeaky voice. My people have been making small changes to ourselves for thousands of years to live in our cold world. Now the Council says we're impure too. Amanda felt a chill. How many species are we talking about? At least 30 that we know of, Silara said. Maybe more. The Council has been very careful not to threaten them all at once, but the pattern is clear. Peter leaned forward. Amanda, they want to form an alliance, a group of species that will stand together against the Council's extremism. And they want humanity to lead it, Vasquez added. What you did for the Kethmari showed moral courage that most of the galaxy lacks right now. Amanda sat down heavily. This was much bigger than she had thought. Have you talked to Captain Morrison about this? We were hoping you would introduce us, Silara said. We know you have influence with him. Before Amanda could answer, alarms started ringing throughout the station. Peter's communicator crackled to life. All senior staff to the command center immediately. We have multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace. They all rushed to the command center. The main screen showed a sight that made Amanda's heart race. Dozens of ships were appearing in space around Luna Station. But these weren't Council ships. They were small, fast vessels from many different species. Jake turned to them as they arrived. It looks like we're about to have a very interesting conversation. The communication board lit up with incoming messages from the new arrivals. Amanda heard voices speaking in different alien languages, but the translation computers were working overtime. Luna Station. This is Captain Mordak of the Alterian Free Fleet. We stand with humanity. Station Commander. This is Admiral Kethvin of the Independent World's Navy. We offer our support. Luna Station. This is Captain Sarah Kim of the Terran Colonial Defense Force. Earth Defense Command ordered us to protect this station. Jake looked at the display showing all the ships. There were at least 50 of them now, from dozens of different species and human colonies. Ambassador Veltar's face appeared on the screen again, but he looked much less confident than before. Captain Morrison, what is the meaning of this gathering? Jake smiled for the first time since the crisis started. Ambassador, it looks like we're not the only ones who disagree with your genetic purity laws. Linda Torres, Earth's chief ambassador to the Council, appeared on another communication channel. She was calling from her ship, which had just arrived with a small fleet of Earth defense vessels. "Ambassador Veltar," Linda said, "I think we need to have a different kind of conversation." Veltar's ice-blue eyes looked around at all the ships surrounding his small fleet. "This is an illegal gathering. The Council will not tolerate this defiance." "Actually," Linda said, "according to Galactic law, this is a peaceful assembly in human space. Unless you're planning to attack civilian refugees, I suggest you back down." Amanda watched Veltar's face as he realized what had happened. He had come to collect a small group of refugees and found instead the beginning of a rebellion. "This is not over," Veltar said. "The Council will respond to this challenge." "We're counting on it," Linda replied. It's time the galaxy had a real discussion about what justice means. As the Council ships retreated, Amanda looked around the command center. Representatives from dozens of species were talking to each other, making plans, forming alliances. The Kethmari had been rejected by the galaxy. But in helping them, humanity had found something much more important than one small refugee group. They had found the courage to stand up for what was right, no matter what the cost. 3 weeks after the confrontation at Luna Station, the galaxy had changed. Jake Morrison stood in the war room looking at the tactical display that showed the blockade around human space. Red dots marked Council warships at every hyperspace jump point leading to human worlds. "They're not letting anything through," reported Commander Wilson. "No trade ships, no passenger vessels, nothing. They've cut us off completely." Admiral Morrison, he had been promoted when Earth Defense Command realized they were facing a real war, studied the display. "What about our food supplies?" Carlos Rodriguez, who had been put in charge of emergency planning, looked up from his tablet. "The outer colonies have enough for maybe 6 months. But the core worlds depend on food imports. If this blockade lasts a year, people will starve." Jake felt the weight of 8 billion human lives pressing down on him. When he had decided to help the Kethmari refugees, he never imagined it would lead to this. "Sir," said Lieutenant Walsh from the communication station, "we're getting reports from New Terra Colony. Their crops are failing because they can't get the fertilizer shipments from the agricultural worlds." Before Jake could respond, Amanda Blake entered the room. She looked tired but excited. "Jake, you need to come to the lab. Jareth and I have something that might change everything." Jake followed Amanda through the corridors to her laboratory. The place had been expanded twice since the Kethmari arrived, and now it looked more like a small university than a simple research facility. In the main lab, a Kethmari scientist named Jareth was working at a complex machine that Jake didn't recognize. The alien looked up when they entered, his large dark eyes bright with excitement. "Admiral Morrison," Jareth said in his careful English, "we have found something wonderful." "What kind of something?" Amanda moved to a computer terminal and brought up what looked like a genetic diagram. "Remember how I told you the Kethmari DNA had been modified by their ancestors? Well, Jareth and I have been studying those modifications. And they didn't just change themselves to be better farmers. They accidentally created something else." Amanda's voice got more excited. "Jake, their modified genetics produce a protein that can cure Alterian plague." Jake stared at her. Alterian plague was one of the worst diseases in the galaxy. It had killed millions of people across dozens of worlds over the past century. There was no cure, no treatment, nothing that could stop it once it started. "Are you sure?" Jareth nodded. "We tested it on samples from the Council's own medical databases. The protein completely stops the plague virus from reproducing. But that's incredible. Why didn't anyone discover this before?" "Because no one wanted to study Kethmari genetics," Amanda said. "The Council declared them contaminated, so most scientists stayed away. We only found it because we've been working so closely with them." Jake's mind raced. Alterian plague was currently spreading through 3 different Council worlds. If humanity could cure it, how fast can we produce this cure? "That's the beautiful part," Jareth said. "The protein is easy to make using standard medical equipment. We could produce enough to treat thousands of people within weeks." Amanda looked at Jake carefully. "There's just one problem. To make the cure, we need Kethmari genetic material, which means we need the Kethmari themselves." Jake understood immediately. The Council wanted to destroy the Kethmari for being genetically impure, but those same genetic changes were the key to curing one of the galaxy's deadliest diseases. "Have you told anyone else about this?" "Just you. We wanted to check with you first." Jake thought for a long moment. This discovery could change everything. But it could also put the Kethmari in even more danger if the Council decided they wanted to use them as medical slaves. "We're going to share this information," he said finally, "but we're going to do it the right way." 2 hours later, Jake stood in the communication center preparing for the most important broadcast of his life. Representatives from 50 different worlds were connected to the call, including several council members who had been secretly sympathetic to the human cause. "Friends," Jake began, "3 weeks ago, the Council imposed a blockade on human space because we refused to surrender refugees who had committed no crime except being different. Today I want to tell you about a discovery that shows just how wrong that decision was." He nodded to Amanda, who began explaining the cure. As she talked, Jake watched the faces on the screens. Some looked shocked, others hopeful, and a few looked angry. When Amanda finished, there was silence for a long moment. Dr. Helen Chang from the Mars Medical Institute was the first to speak. "Admiral Morrison, are you saying that the species the Council wants to eliminate could save millions of lives?" "That's exactly what I'm saying." Senator Paul Kim from the Centauri colonies leaned forward. "Why are you telling us this? You could have kept it secret and used it as a bargaining chip." Jake had expected this question. "Because that's not who we are. Humanity doesn't hold medical cures hostage for political advantage. If we did that, we'd be no better than the Council." Admiral Kethvin of the Independent World spoke up. "Admiral Morrison, what do you need from us? We need you to help us get this cure to the worlds that need it. But more than that, we need you to understand what this really means. The Council is trying to destroy an entire species whose only crime was being different. And it turns out that those differences might save the galaxy." Captain Silara of the Zephyrian Resistance added, "My government has been fighting Alterian plague outbreaks on 2 of our worlds. If this cure works, it works," Amanda said firmly. "We've tested it thoroughly. But there's something else you need to know. This probably isn't the only medical breakthrough we could make by studying species the Council calls impure. How many cures, how many advances are we losing by following these genetic purity laws?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Over the next few days, word of the cure spread throughout the galaxy. Jake had expected the Council to deny or ignore the discovery, but instead something unexpected happened. Ships started arriving at the edge of human space. Not warships, but medical vessels and research ships from dozens of different worlds. They couldn't enter human space because of the blockade, but they waited just outside hoping for access to the cure. The pressure on the Council grew every day. Families of plague victims demonstrated outside Council buildings. Medical organizations demanded access to the cure. Even some Council members began speaking out against the blockade. But the most dramatic moment came when a ship from Alteria Prime, the Council's capital world, broke through the blockade. Jake was in the command center when the alarms went off. "Admiral," reported Lieutenant Walsh, "we have a single ship approaching at high speed. It's flying medical flags and broadcasting emergency codes." "What kind of emergency?" "Alterian plague outbreak on the capital world. They're requesting immediate medical assistance." Jake looked at the tactical display. Council warships were moving to intercept the medical ship. But it was fast and had a head start. "Sir," Commander Wilson said quietly, "this could be a trap. Maybe. But if it's not, there are sick people on that ship who need help." The medical ship reached Luna Station just minutes ahead of the pursuing Council vessels. Jake watched through the observation windows as it docked. The ship's captain, a middle-aged Alterian woman named Dr. Kayla Voss, practically ran to the medical center. "Please," she said to Dr. Martinez, "I have 47 plague victims on my ship. My own daughter is dying. I heard about your cure." Amanda and Jareth worked for 18 straight hours to produce enough of the protein cure for all the patients. Jake stayed with Dr. Voss in the waiting area, watching her pace back and forth. "Why did you come here?" he asked. "You must have known the Council would consider it treason." Dr. Voss stopped pacing and looked at him with tired eyes. "Admiral Morrison, I've been a doctor for 30 years. I took an oath to save lives, not to follow politics. When I heard that a cure existed but was being kept from my patients because of some genetic purity law, I knew what I had to do. Even if it means you can never go home, my home is wherever I can help sick people. If that's here with you and the Kithmari, then this is my home now." The cure worked perfectly. Within days, all 47 patients were recovering. Word spread instantly throughout the galaxy, broadcast by news networks and spread through social media faster than the Council could stop it. Jake stood at his window watching the medical ship prepare to leave. Dr. Voss had asked for political asylum, and Jake had granted it immediately. She would stay and help train other doctors to use the cure. Commander Wilson joined him at the window.
Sir, we're getting reports from all over the galaxy.
More medical ships are heading our way, and there are demonstrations on at least 20 council worlds demanding access to the cure. Jake nodded. How many ships do we have now? Over 200 from 43 different species. It's the largest alliance anyone has seen in centuries. All because we decided to help some refugees. All because we decided to do the right thing. Jake looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the council was making plans and issuing threats. But here around Luna Station, species that had been enemies for generations were working together. The Kethmari had been rejected by the galaxy. The Great Assembly Hall on Council Prime had never been so full. Ambassador Linda Torres walked through the massive doors and felt the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. Representatives from over 300 species filled the curved rows of seats that rose up like a great bowl around the central speaking platform. Elder Zephyra walked beside Linda, her silver-scaled skin catching the light from the hall's crystal dome. The old Kethmari had insisted on coming to speak for her people, even though it meant risking capture. "Are you ready for this?" Linda asked quietly. "I have been ready for this moment my entire life," Zephyra replied. "My people have waited 300 years to tell their story to the galaxy." Behind them walked representatives from 47 different species that had joined what they now called the Alliance of Free Worlds. Admiral Morrison had wanted to come, but Linda convinced him that diplomats should handle diplomacy while soldiers prepared for war. The hall grew quiet as they reached the central platform. Linda looked up at the sea of alien faces staring down at them. Some looked curious, others angry, and many just seemed tired. At the highest tier sat the Council of Five, the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Ambassador Veltar was there, his ice-blue eyes filled with hatred. Next to him sat Chancellor Morthus of the Trade Federation, Prime Minister Keldan of the Military Alliance, and two others whose species Linda didn't recognize. "The Assembly recognizes Ambassador Torres of the Terran Federation," announced the session moderator. Linda stepped forward to the speaking podium. Her voice was amplified throughout the hall and broadcast to billions of beings across the galaxy. "Honored representatives," she began. 6 months ago, a broken ship carrying 800 refugees arrived at one of our stations. They were hungry, sick, and desperate. They had been rejected by every world they visited because the Council declared them genetically impure. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Some voices sounded sympathetic, others disapproving. We could have turned them away like everyone else. We could have followed the letter of the law and sent them back to face what the Council calls justice. But we didn't. Linda paused and looked directly at Veltar. We didn't because we believe that how a civilization treats its most vulnerable members shows what that civilization really stands for. "The human speaks of law," Veltar interrupted, standing up in his high seat. "But humanity has broken the most fundamental law of all, the law of genetic purity that keeps our galaxy stable." "Stable?" Linda's voice got louder. "You call it stable when entire species are destroyed for the crime of being different? You call it stable when medical cures are banned because they come from people you consider impure?" She gestured to Elder Zephyra. "I want you all to meet Zephyra of the Kethmari. Her people have lived peacefully for 1,000 years. They never conquered other worlds, never started wars, never hurt anyone. Their greatest achievement was learning to grow food in places where nothing else could live." Zephyra stepped forward. When she spoke, her musical voice carried clearly through the silent hall. "Honored beings," she said, "my people did not choose to change ourselves. Our ancestors faced a choice. Adapt to a dying world or watch their children starve. They chose life. For this choice, we have been called abominations, criminals, and threats to galactic order." Her large dark eyes swept across the assembly. "But we are none of those things. We are farmers and healers and teachers. We want only to live in peace and help others when we can." "Precisely the problem," Veltar said coldly. "Your genetic modifications represent the first step toward chaos. If we allow species to change themselves, where does it end? How long before someone creates biological weapons? How long before genetic experiments destroy entire worlds?" Linda had expected this argument. "Ambassador Veltar, the Kethmari have existed for 1,000 years without causing any of the problems you describe. But let me ask you something else. How many people have died from Alterian plague in the past century? Veltar looked uncomfortable. That is not relevant to this discussion. 47 million people. 47 million beings from dozens of different species. Linda's voice rang through the hall. And now we have a cure. A cure that exists because of Kethmari genetic modifications. The assembly erupted in voices. Representatives shouted questions and arguments. The moderator called for order, but it took several minutes for the noise to die down. Dr. Elena Vasquez, representing the New Centauri Medical Consortium, stood up in the audience section. May I address the assembly? The moderator nodded. I have personally treated over 300 plague victims using the Kethmari cure. Every single one survived. This cure has already saved thousands of lives across 17 different worlds. She looked directly at the Council of Five. Are you saying we should abandon this cure because of where it came from? Chancellor Morthus leaned forward. The issue is not the cure itself, but the precedent. If we reward genetic modification, we encourage others to follow the same dangerous path. Linda stepped back to the podium. Dangerous? Let me tell you what's dangerous. What's dangerous is destroying entire civilizations because they don't fit your idea of genetic purity. What's dangerous is caring more about abstract principles than real lives. She gestured to the representatives from dozens of species sitting in the Alliance section. Look around this hall. 47 different species have joined together, not because they want to conquer anyone or change the galactic order, but because they're tired of living in fear. Fear that they'll be next. Fear that some small difference in their biology will make them targets. Captain Silara of the Zephyrian Resistance stood up. My people have made small modifications to survive in our high radiation environment. Under the current laws, we could be declared impure at any time. Engineer Tokhan of the Delta Coalition spoke next. My people adapted to extreme cold. Are we criminals too? One by one, representatives from dozens of species stood up and described the genetic adaptations their ancestors had made to survive on different worlds. The hall filled with voices telling stories of survival, adaptation, and the will to live. Linda watched the faces of the Council of Five as the testimony continued. Most looked stubborn and angry, but she noticed that one of them, a being she didn't recognize with golden skin and 6 arms, was listening carefully and taking notes. When the testimonies ended, the golden-skinned counselor stood up. I am Counselor Zarbeth of the Neutral Worlds. I have a question for Ambassador Veltar. Veltar looked surprised. Yes, Counselor? If genetic purity is so important to galactic stability, why are we the ones causing instability? We have created refugees, provoked wars, and turned away medical cures. Meanwhile, the humans and their allies have created the largest peaceful coalition in galactic history. The hall went completely silent. Veltar's face got darker. Counselor Zarbeth, you cannot seriously be suggesting. I am suggesting that our current policies have failed. Look at the results. We have driven peaceful species into exile, denied medical treatments to dying people, and created more enemies than we've eliminated threats. Another counselor, Prime Minister Keldan, spoke up. What are you proposing? Linda felt her heart race. This was the moment everything depended on. Counselor Zarbeth looked around the assembly. I propose we abandon the genetic purity laws entirely. I propose we judge species by their actions, not their biology. And I propose we formally apologize to the Kethmari and all the other species we have wronged. The assembly exploded in noise again. Some representatives cheered. Others shouted in anger. Veltar and 2 other counselors were on their feet, arguing furiously with Zarbeth and Keldan. The vote took 3 days. Species after species stood up to declare their position. The old guard, led by Veltar, fought desperately to maintain their policies. But the tide had turned. When the final vote was counted, the genetic purity laws were abolished by a margin of 3-1. The blockade of human space was lifted. The Kethmari were granted full rights and protections under galactic law. But the most important moment came after the official ceremony ended. Linda was walking through the great plaza outside the assembly hall when she saw something that made her stop. A group of children from a dozen different species were playing together in the plaza's fountain. Human children splashed alongside young Kethmari, Zephyrians, Alterians, and others. They were laughing and playing games that mixed traditions from all their worlds. Elder Zephra joined Linda at the edge of the plaza. Thank you, the old Kethmari said quietly. For what? For showing the galaxy what we could be instead of what we were afraid of becoming. Linda smiled. We didn't do it alone. Everyone you see here made this happen. Yes, but someone had to take the first step. Someone had to decide that helping strangers was more important than following rules. 5 years later, Linda stood in the same plaza, but everything had changed. The fountain was now surrounded by a garden where plants from hundreds of different worlds grew together. The plaza had become a symbol of the new galaxy, different species living and thriving together. She watched her own daughter playing with a group of friends that included humans, Kethmari, and 6 other species. The children didn't see aliens and humans. They just saw friends.